Last time on the Forward Slash, we were meeting with Matt McDole. We had a great conversation. It went tremendously. It went so long that we had to break this thing into two parts. And this is the continuation of that, the second part. Hope you enjoyed it as much as you did the first. Another thing I definitely wanted to talk to you about, we had a prep call a couple weeks ago, and you mentioned you were headed out of town at the time, but you were like, I've got to be home by Sunday. And it was very important from a business standpoint for you. Tell us about that.
Yeah. That was Super Bowl Sunday, and that is a big deal at Yum. Super Bowl is Pizza Hut, one of Pizza Hut's largest days, and it's a large day across all of our brands, but for Pizza Hut, it usually is like their mega day for the year. So I've been at Yum 6 years, and I think I've spent 6 Super Bowls at the office. You know, the whole team gets in, and it's like a command center. I think a previous CTO at Pizza Hut used to say that the Super Bowl is our Super Bowl, right? Yeah, the prep for it is usually quite large, especially in past years. I think we've hit a maturity point in the Bike platform, which is sort of this internal SaaS platform that we've been building for Yum that powers things like e-commerce and point of sale in the store and aggregators and stuff like that. We have less worry about some of the spikiness because we've been building to make this platform more robust. But we still take this day very seriously because there's still a lot of things. There's third parties, right, that we depend on for loyalty and payments. And, QSR is very bursty. So, you can have a normal day where you're maybe getting 20 orders a second flowing into an e-com system, and then a huge promotion drops, or it's a big day like this, and suddenly you're at, I don't know, something like well over 10,000 orders for the minute, or 300 or 400 orders a second. So you're 10 or 20xing sort of the load that's hitting a system, and that is challenging because if you're trying to scale to 20x your load, you have different constraint choices you can make, right? You don't want to run at 20x your capacity all the time because then it's super expensive. And there's some stuff that auto scales, right? Like you have your services and your EC2 instances that auto scale, and that can lag a little bit, but like usually that's fine. But there's other things like databases that take a little bit of time for us to scale up. So we try within our platform to be able to handle sort of 1.5, 2x of our peak nominal load. But then for these big scale days, we will do scale modeling, and we'll also do a bunch of perf testing. And oftentimes between the previous Super Bowl and this one, there's been architectural changes, both at a brand level and the brand tech that exists that sits between the Byte platform and us. And we want to just vet that nothing has been introduced, since those last major scale days that has introduced like a performance regression. So it's very energizing though. We order a bunch of food, and we have graphs up. This year, one of our executives, Robbie Kohler, he built this globe dashboard, and again, he built it with AI that was hooked into ClickHouse database, real-time streaming database, and it was showing dots on the US map for every order at the store. And this thing just started lighting up like a Christmas tree. And we had it up on a TV in our war room, and it looked really cool. And there's, usually I think the peak for Super Bowl, it hits maybe about 45 minutes into the game or something like that. And whenever we crest that peak, and it starts to go down, it's like celebration in the team. Then we feel like we got it. Everybody's still paying attention, but after we've crested the peak, people feel pretty safe.
Wow. All right. So this is fascinating. What contributes to that 45-minute? Like, why is it 45 minutes into the game? Do people just like, oh man, we forgot to order pizza? Or is it just that the I mean, I don't know what causes that delay. Why isn't it before the game? What have you guys? I mean, I'm sure you guys have looked into it, but
Yeah,
like, what do you attribute that to?
I'm sure if I talk to like probably like the business side of Pizza Hut, they would have like a really articulate answer. And I was actually wondering this like while we were at the Super Bowl show a bit, like Taco Bell, for example, they run these sort of flash scarcity promotions that like are pretty popular. They'll give out like a really high value deal, and the way that their load looks is like it'll be sort of like a flat line and then a massive spike that'll last for like 20 minutes and then it drops. So that's like a load profile that we need to handle for them, and that can stress our system in unique ways. Pizza Hut's load profile is like a slow and then rapidly rising crest, and then it stays pretty high for about an hour, but then like gradually increasing to that peak, and then it starts to slowly decline, and then sometimes I think we see a little bump during halftime, right? Because people are kind of taking a break during
Uh-huh.
halftime to
Sure.
like order some dinner then, but then a steady drop off and decline throughout the evening, and those unique sort of load patterns based on the different events and brands and how they kind of run their promotions and things is kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I would assume that like because of the predictability of the Super Bowl's coming, that this is going to be busy. I would assume you scale up. You don't wait for the auto scalers. You kind of beef everything up ahead of time. Um, but
Absolutely.
those, and then what about when you mentioned the Taco Bell thing? Are those promotions just kind of part of normal everyday procedures? Like they're running those all the time, or is that a Super Bowl thing?
Um, so early in our platform days, the biggest load event that we had was Pizza Hut Super Bowl, and and that was we were spending all our time prepping for it. But over I want to say like the last 2 years, maybe a little bit less. One Taco Bell has grown wonderfully, and their digital growth has grown hugely. But then also, they started to run these Taco Tuesdays, and um, as we were engineering the platform, we were kind of engineering it and the peak load around the Super Bowl profile
Mhm.
for Pizza Hut. But this is actually the benefit that Yum has of having multiple brands and putting them on this multi-tenant platform is you spend investment in one area and then you start to reap rewards for it in others. So we had done all this prep and design around handling pizza at Super Bowl that then directly translated into a benefit for Taco Bell, and in them being able to run these extremely spiky Taco Tuesdays. Um, and they run those um, almost every Tuesday, I think. And some of them are bigger than others depending on the promotion and stuff, but early on, it was stressful on the engineering team because we weren't used to that load profile. It's sort of flat spike for 20 minutes and then drop. And you kind of have to be joined at the hip between the brand and sort of the platform, because you have to be like, all right, let us know when we're going to have these promotions, how big of a promo. So we kind of developed a system of like t-shirt sizing them. Like, is this like an XL? Is this like that big one that we did before? Or do we expect this one to be a bit more conservative? Kind of then internally scaling our systems based on that. But um, another thing, because it is a multi-tenant platform though, as well, is like, it allows you to absorb more load too, right? Because you're building it for the scale and spiky and peakiness of multiple brand markets in multiple countries, and because of that, average load that you are sort of building towards is much higher, and it allows you to sort of pick up some of the peaks and valleys
Mhm.
across these. It allows you to kind of absorb them a little bit better than if you were just hyper fitting it to a single brand market.
Gotcha. And one thing that's always interesting, it has been fascinating to me whenever you run like load tests and those sort of things, like the path up that curve, up that spike is treacherous, of course. I mean, there's all
Yeah,
sorts of things that can go wrong. But what I've found is the things that kind of hit you are the things that don't go well coming back down the other side of that spike.
yeah.
And can you talk about that? Do you guys have that same experience? Have are there special things that you have to do to you know reset
Yeah,
things as you go back down?
Yeah, I remember. I remember us when we were building the platform, and like I said, we were first sort of charting our North Star towards being able to ensure that we would be bulletproof for Super Bowl. It was like we were hunting bottlenecks, right? And it was a little bit like how I was describing before. You fix one bottleneck, and then all you do is immediately uncover what the next bottleneck is. And
Mm-hmm.
we probably spent 8 months where there were dedicated engineers. The director of our e-commerce platform, his name is Guillermo. I told him, I'm like, dude, we need to be able to handle at least 300 orders a second. Like, you got to get that done. And we were handling a good bit less than that at the time. So he's like, got it. And that was like his challenge that he had in front of him. And early bottlenecks would be things like our menu system. Like every order, and if you look at like through the life cycle of an order of somebody browsing to like the product list page, then to the detail page, and then adding something to their cart, involves this sequence of like 18-ish calls just for
Uh-huh.
like adding like a single product to the thing. Um, Menu was like a big bottleneck because almost everything needs cart needs to pull the menu and the store information. So one, they can validate that the product is still valid for that store, that the store hours are still correct, that that product is available during that time, because our menu model allows products to be available for different windows of time. The pricing can
Uh-huh.
change based on the time of day. There's things like you could imagine, happy hour drinks, right? So during a 2-hour window, maybe drinks are this amount, but then outside of that, they're not. And he just was like a machine hunting down these bottlenecks. And finally, one by one, the, and we probably spent a considerable amount of time and money in running these perf tests. I had our SRE team screaming at us because we were blowing our budgets in terms of infra budgets, because we're running Super Bowl level load tests for 8 months all the time. So it's basically like we had like basically a mini Super Bowl going on every day, and that's just the servers are screaming, but we wanted to make sure that we could handle that. In terms of there being differences on the way down, I think the main thing that we were worried about there was there's being able to handle like a peak or a spike, but there's another type of load test that you need to do that are like soak tests, where we it's like don't just like see if we can handle 200 or 300 or 400 orders a second for 10 or 20 minutes. Put it at 200 orders a second for an hour and a half.
Uh-huh.
And what that will start to show you is like if you have memory leaks, right? And that did show like early memory leaks. I think like a customer service, or maybe it was a loyalty service, had a memory leak, and we wouldn't see that on the initial spike test because everything gets sort of built up and torn down in 20 minutes, and you won't see that. So you got to run those soak tests, and that can catch you, after even if things are coming down, because it's still a reasonably high load and it's just going for longer and longer.
Yeah, a lot of like caches or connection pools and those sort of things
Yeah.
can kind of stay
Yes.
elevated for a while
Exactly.
after you come back down. Like, yeah, those things are the ones that kind of can bite you, and you don't think about, hey, well, those things need to actually shrink now too, and they're
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you mentioned this bite platform. This is fascinating to me, and you've talked a little bit about it, but maybe um, talk about how that came to be. What was that journey like? Because I don't think a lot of folks have done that. I mean, this is a huge scale problem for you all, and tackling it across those brands. There's unique problems and opportunities there that a lot of companies don't have. So I think you have a really cool, unique perspective there, and I'd love to hear more about that journey of how that bite thing came to be.
Yeah. I don't know the exact timeline, but I think it was like maybe around 2019. Um, Maybe a little bit before. The senior leadership, the senior technical leadership, and at the time our CFO and now our CEO of the company, Chris Turner, and then the various CTOs of the organization, uh, kind of got together, and they're like, "Look, we're the world's largest quick service restaurant company, and uh, if there's any QSR company that could build its own tech for these things, it's us." And then I think they were asking themselves the question, should we? And I don't think it was a clear cut yes or no initially. It was, some people, maybe strategically think that it's not a differentiator, right? Or the core business, right? And for those things that are kind of commoditized, maybe you should leave them to third parties, right? And not invest your capital towards those things.
Sure.
So I think there's an initial group that kind of got together, and they actually kind of did a little bit of like a world tour and went and visited and did a review of the technology in the stores at our major markets, spoke with sort of the leaders in those markets, and then finally came back. And the initiative was called like Yum 2020 at the time, which was like basically what they were trying to answer: should we build our own tech? And um, they all kind of put their hands in a circle and said yes. Like we think that there's enough differentiation here that we can do across the tech that we should. So I think it was really forward thinking, and I joined the company like a year later in Yum in maybe like February of 2020, and they
just in time.
Yeah, just in time. And that I joined because in my career, something I have learned over time is to not optimize for like, don't optimize necessarily exclusively for money. Don't optimize exclusively for even the company. And many times, like, optimize for the project that you're going to get on and the opportunity that those projects will bring. Because I find that ends up long-term benefiting your career more.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw as this opportunity coming in, the first thing that I owned coming in was I was the director of the e-commerce platform. And there were other things that I didn't own. There was a new Android-based point of sale that was going to be built as well. There was a menu management system at the time, and then some acquisitions that we were making as well for a few other technology pieces. But I saw this as an opportunity just to build literally the world's largest restaurant e-commerce platform. And to me, that excited me. And then over time, as we were building these, we started to see these opportunities for like vertical integration, and to me, that's where the real value differentiation is. Yes, we can build a point of sale system, and we can build an e-com system, and we can build a kitchen display system. But if you kind of build those in isolated ways, it's like, what is the benefit over just using 3 or 4 different vendors for that? There might be some minor benefit either in cost or maybe your ability to customize those solutions a little bit. But what is kind of happening, I think, in the industry is this drive towards these vertically integrated ecosystems where, if you're a customer and you want to go to a Taco Bell, there's a customer expectation now that you can do loyalty in a kiosk or in the drive-thru. Mm-hmm. And in order to be able to do that, you think about how do you build that? If you have an off-the-shelf point of sale system, an off-the-shelf kitchen display system, an off-the-shelf e-com system, that is very hard to do because all these things are kind of bolted together and have adapter layers between them. If you own your own POS system, though, you can directly bake your loyalty program into the POS. You can open it up to the kiosk in the store. You can make your POS, your e-com system, and your kiosk all speak the same menu model, the same tax model, and allow people to author that one time and then push it to all of them. And so that to me, that's been the huge value differentiator there across them. And eventually, we started to build more and more of those vertically integrated features. It eventually got a name, Byte by Yum, where, and it started to feel less like these individual solutions and more like this sort of SaaS platform within the company. Mm-hmm. And that sort of journey from, those individual products to that SaaS platform has been incredibly rewarding. It's one of the reasons I like QSR as a domain. Is in the past I've worked where I'll own mobile as a division, and we're doing mobile apps, and that excites me, and I like mobile. But if you work in QSR, you get to work on tech that's like edge server deployments. Like we said before, there's voice AI in the drive-through. There's e-com. There's mobile. There's POS systems that are Android based. There's such a diversity of tech that I wasn't used to having, and I really like being able to go up and down that stack.
Anytime you're developing these kind of backbone-y type of platforms for multiple consumers, of course you always have the every consumer or every user of this thing is going to think they're unique, and in a lot of ways they are, but they think they're unique in the ways that they shouldn't really worry about being unique, those sort of things, right? But there are there are unique aspects of and you got various brands. This is no news to you, of course, but like, how do you build in that, like, the ability to customize into those platforms? Like, maybe do you provide like a vanilla flavor of some feature that might work for two of the brands, but one of the brands might say, we need to kind of hook in here and customize this. How do you manage that?
Yeah. Yeah. That ends up, that question has kind of been like the crux of so many discussions within the Byte team and within the Yum team, because every brand market within Yum kind of had its own tech and its own tech teams and what they were building. And as some of them have shifted onto Byte, every new market, every brand country combination pair was essentially different. We had to go in and assess, one, are there gap requirements to us supporting this market? And a dirty word that I do not like is parity, feature parity, because I don't think that should be a goal. Like what you could very easily do is just go into every market and then replicate exactly what they have in that market, and then all you've done is built a mishmash of everybody's legacy system inside your new system. Now, with that
with
being,
a bunch of if statements,
yeah, exactly, right. So what you need to do is you need to look at every perceived gap and say, one, is this an actual gap, or is this just like a business process change? And business process changes are hard, and it takes, senior level buy-in, right? If you want to say, like, we understand that you did it this way, but we think that doing it this way is functionally equivalent. And if we can do it this way and get everybody to do it this way, like, everybody kind of benefits from that. So that requires, sort of senior level buy-in to do that. There are sometimes that there are legitimate gaps, either because it's a new brand, right, that we hadn't adopted before. So every brand kind of had its unique requirements in it a bit, and with how they work and operate. Like, we designed a menu model and we did a bunch of modeling of products across all three brands. But ultimately, as we get into these markets, they want to construct products and constructs in a way that, like, maybe you didn't do exactly. So you have to amend the menu model a little bit to be like, okay, like, this taco party pack product, we didn't think about, modeling perfectly, and we need to amend our sort of domain model to be able to handle something like this. There's instances of that. And then there are just things that, maybe are features that are differences, but if we ask the market, like, hey, is this actually a valuable feature? And then they'll say, like, actually, no, this represents, less than, 0.1% of sales, or, is not a big value driver for us, and we would rather invest in loyalty or other things like that. Then it's kind of like these trade-offs about, okay, well, maybe we won't carry that forward, but there's this other new thing that you want that we'll make sure that we can get in that. But every new feature that comes in, it requires product discipline amongst our product team to be like, to not overfit to the asker, and to always, and that is like a temptation. I don't know if you've experienced this, James, where it's like requirement comes in, and then it can be very easy for it to quickly translate into, stories, requirements, and then suddenly you see it in, like, dev's hands. And you really need that sort of mature product leaders in there to instead say, this is a instance of a thing that people are asking for. Let's zoom out. Let's go ask the 5 major markets that exist out there. How do they do this? And then design a feature, a capability that's not overfit to that one brand market. So that is a constant thing that we have to be vigilant about.
Yeah, that discipline is definitely required. I think, in my experience with that was building kind of a generic, and not quite at your scale, of course, but like a generic assessment platform for a higher education learning platform, online learning platform. But like, and this was an interesting thing. So when you try to build like kind of that backbone-y type of a thing, when you're supplying this backbone features, you go to individual teams that have specific needs. Some of those specific needs, as you're saying, they kind of creep in, and you got to be disciplined and not allow them to push those very, very one-off, features and all of that into the main system, because it does end up being a bunch of if statements or combinatorics explosion of configuration parameters and all of that you can't test everything.
You'd also mentioned, like, and like, rather than just saying no to those, like, one of the things that we've tried to do is, like, the Byte platform from the beginning is very API first.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we have a set of GraphQL APIs, federated GraphQL APIs across all the domains. So there's a number of things that a brand market had asked for that instead we'll say we'll be the core sort of transaction layer for you, or data management layer or POS layer. But if you want to build this capability local to your brand market, here's the tools you need to build it on top of us. And in that way, it kind of keeps the market specific stuff local to that market.
Mm.
And we've had instances also where a market has done that. They've built something on top of us that then later we realize actually multiple markets would benefit from this. And then we ask them to inner source it into the core platform, where it sort of
Cool.
graduates from being like a market specific thing to then it actually shifting in. There was an example where Pizza Hut Global wanted to have sort of polygonal areas for defining a store delivery area. And we had a more naive way of sort of handling store localization. But we didn't have the capacity to build that right away. So they wrote a proposal in RFC and submitted it to the architecture team, and the architecture team reviewed it. We iterated on it back and forth, and then that team contributed like polygonal delivery areas, and then now other brand markets are able to use that same feature. So establishing that sort of inner sourcing process and RFC process was important early, because you're going to get a lot of pressure for these features, and having relief valves is really important. If you can have a relief valve, that is one way. APIs is another way. For the POS, we have like a well-defined extension plugin model that allows people to drop in, and that's another relief valve. But if you just say no, like that won't work. Like you run into too much institutional friction, and some of these capabilities that they want are important to their market or business. You won't get the adoption you want. So you gotta kind of identify those relief valves that you can introduce.
Right, you mentioned store like delivery areas and stuff like that. Now that you can support a more fitting, do you see gerrymandering type things going on with your stores? Like, no, I don't want that area. We don't sell any pizzas over here. I want this area over here. I want the rich neighborhood over. Do you see that going on? Is that a thing?
I don't know if I've seen that. I have heard an apocryphal story one time. That was there was a meeting where some people were just outside a delivery zone, and it was like a leadership meeting, and they wanted some pizzas delivered. And someone had gone in and edited a delivery area that like included that little area just so it'd go through the system, and they got the order through, and then quickly did it. I don't know if it's true or not, but it is said through the halls of Pizza Hut.
And the driver was like, I don't
He's
think
like,
this is our
I don't
area.
think it's our
What
area.
is
This is
What
a
is-
long drive out here. Yeah.
I would tell you that the driver's view of what a good area to deliver to versus the stores is probably different. I remember when I was, in my experience, my vast experience in this area, one of the best tipper that we would always fight over was in a trailer park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just somebody who worked for tips probably.
Yep.
And every time, like the drivers, if we see that address pop up,
right,
everybody's fighting over that. And that dude always gave the best tips. So
right.
probably not what wasn't the best from a sales perspective, maybe for that area, but we loved it.
Yeah. I bet. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I mean, usually people who have to work for tips, they do a really good job.
Yeah. I've seen that a lot. Yeah. Or if you feel like, you're kind of on the outside of the delivery area too, then people tend to be a bit more generous in saying like, thank you for continuing to deliver to my house that's out in the sticks.
Us delivery drivers learned a few tricks on that. You're like, oh,
Okay.
wow, you sure live way out here.
Yeah.
You're saying those things, or when it's raining, you'll have a jacket, right?
Yeah.
You take it off when you go to the door. Like there's tricks.
Yeah.
Like we knew how to do that and get to good tips. So anyway, all right. So we have to move on to the next section of our show. This has been fantastic. But our next section is the ship it or skip it.
Ship or skip. Everybody, we got to tell us if you ship or skip.
So there's been a lot of talk about this notion of like AI is going to replace juniors, and we've touched on this a little bit, but not quite on the junior part of this. Some people are saying we don't ever have to hire juniors anymore. Some people are saying you're insane for not hiring juniors because you won't have seniors in the future. Those sort of things. there's been some back and forth on this. What is your take on this?
This is I think a really tricky topic for our industry that we are going to still need to navigate together a bit. Because like if you choose like a local Optiva, right? Like right now, probably the most productive team you could put together would be 2 or 3 senior engineers strapped with AI coding tooling, right? Like you take your best devs, give them AI coding, and I think that they are disproportionately advantaged by this AI coding tooling than almost any other cohort because they have the taste, they still have the architectural design, they can steer it, the prompts that they give this thing, you're going to get amazing results out of this. But on the junior side, it's this double-edged sword a little bit where AI coding can be a humongous unlock. Earlier, we talked about, juniors asking, as they're onboarding, asking questions about the code base and learning, and you have this sort of infinitely patient oracle to teach you, how does this thing work? One of my favorite things that I've done recently is just clone down large public repos for projects that I use and then ask it how something works. If I was ever curious, like before I could have like investigated it, but it would have taken me time. But now I'm just asking the agent, like, hey, how did they put this thing together? How does the design of this thing work? That is a huge enabler. The risk that we have, I think, is a risk that spans just education in general, right? Like colleges, I'm sure professors, I'm sure even middle school, high school teachers are kind of confronting like what teaching in a world of AI is like, right? Because in a world where you're going to have something output an essay in 20 seconds, like now you need to kind of rethink about how we ensure that the muscle for example writing or for coding or anything is flexed and used, because the risk that you have is that you have not built up the muscle from building things, and there's no shortcut out of that, right? The only way that you become an expert in something is you clock what was it, like 10,000 hours with it, right? And you've made a ton of mistakes, and the quickest way you learn anything is just to do it and do it and do it and do it and repeat and make messes and learn and play. And if you attempt to short circuit that process and you just are kind of talking to a black box, but without understanding what's going into it, that's the danger zone, I think, for junior engineers. And I don't think we don't need junior engineers, because then it's kind of like an industry eating its seed corn a little bit. It's like you said, how are we going to have senior engineers in the future? And I think it is just going to kind of change how juniors sort of interact with the company and the tasks that they do, and then the ways that the companies need to ensure that they're supporting those junior engineers, that they still get that sort of engineering muscle that they have. And I don't think we have a perfect answer to this yet. But if I were a junior engineer, I would force myself to use AI coding for the benefits that it would bring, but still maybe, to ask how things are put together and architected and learn. But I might try and code a feature on my own at first, right? And then start with a clean Git work tree, and then ask an AI coding agent to do it, and then compare what you did versus it. And yes, this takes a little bit longer, but you're still kind of getting that muscle, and then ultimately the benefit of, the AI coding insight, and then kind of think critically about where they differed. And maybe you did something that was better, right? Or you thought of an edge case or a use case that it didn't, but then take the merger of those two results, and maybe move that forward as your artifact. I don't think anybody in any industry that sort of offloads their thinking, their critical thinking, is going to be in for a good time. So we just got to find ways that people can still think hard and think critically, and hopefully it'll maybe free them up a little bit to be a little bit less concerned about immediate syntactical issues, and think about the meat of the problem, the core architecture, the core performance, the design, the keep the user in mind about how we're building it and what we're doing here. But they can't treat it as a black box and just type into it, or else they're not going to develop those muscles.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. As you said, we're learning our way through this as an industry, but like you hear people talk about, like we still hire juniors, but how we train them up is there's kind of more of those soft skills that we're focusing on, and so that's going to be that'll be an interesting, growing up in the software engineering industry where you're talking about soft skills as the very first thing, like that was unheard of, when we got out of school, like, no, learn how to code, learn how to test, learn how to this. It'll be fascinating. Okay. And I want to see if this wasn't on the list, but it just kind of occurred to me, the SaaS is dead thing. Is that something that maybe, would you be, is that fine to throw you a curveball?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and another topic that it seems to be a strong signal I'm sensing in the market right now that I was wondering what your take was on that. You hear a lot of these folks saying SaaS is dead. Like I don't need a SaaS provider to build a kind of the vanilla solution that everybody jumps on board with, and it doesn't quite fit everything I need to do. Now that I have AI tools, I can just build custom software always, every time, and just build something custom exactly fit for me. Where are you at on that?
I don't think SaaS is dead. I think it's a little bit like how developers just historically have underestimated the complexity in SaaS that exists. Where the old joke before was that people think that they can create a Reddit in an afternoon, or like a Stack Overflow clone or something like that, and you absolutely can, right? Like, but it is a bit of that Pareto principle a little bit, or the 80-20 rule, where you can achieve 80% of the result for 20% of the effort very quickly. But then that last 20% is so dramatically hard. I think we have still not removed the bottlenecks in terms of like supporting something at scale, ensuring it's robust and reliable, that it's secure. I do think it puts a little bit of pressure on SaaS that they need to ensure that they are kind of moving up the value chain a bit, and continuing to innovate. And that if all you own is like a single use tool, right? That maybe there's more threat of that industry. I'll give like an example. There's been several utilities like on my own computer that I've used that I would sort of call like single purpose tools that I use and I paid for. There was a voice tool that I used on my MacBook that if you press and hold the command key and you just say something aloud, it would automatically transcribe it, and it also kind of clean up the text a little bit, and it was super fast. And I was using this a lot, but then my primary PC is a Linux machine. And they didn't have this available with this platform. And in an afternoon, I had replicated the core bits of the capability for that tool. Where earlier I had mentioned that sort of NVIDIA parakeet model that was so amazing. I had it integrated. It was running on the CPU. I had the key binding for my meta key, and I was like, "This is amazing!" Like I might port this over to Mac, and I would use that on Mac because it did. I guess on one side, for single-use tools, I can see them being under threat a little bit. And I can see especially developers increasingly customizing their setup to their own needs because the cost of doing so is lower. Devs have always have a proclivity towards, spending weeks automating, a task that, honestly only saved them 3 or 5 minutes, but they got all this joy out of automating it. But I think that's just going to drive that even further. But in terms of like large scale SaaS software, my experience is that it's so big and so heavyweight that at least at current tool capability levels, I think it's relatively, safe. I don't picture that totally getting upended. Now I could picture other new entrants that are still quite large using, AI to build new versions, right? So if you imagine there's some big SaaS system that was not AI. It was built pre-AI. And then there's a new entrant that comes in and builds it, and it's sort of AI native, right? It's kind of like how Excel now has Claude hooked into it, right? If there was an industry where you had Excel spreadsheets, but then a new entrant came in that had a functionally equivalent entrant, but it had like agentic ability in it, that I think is going to put some of those, existing SaaS players kind of under the gun a little bit. But I think we've just replaced one SaaS with another large SaaS provider. Like whether or not like a 2-person team is going to replicate and build and robustly support a huge SaaS endeavor, I think we're not quite near that. So if there's like this spectrum of like small single-use tools to like maybe mid-size SaaS, I could see there's being some threat there. As you move up into the larger and larger companies and the larger and larger things, I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I think there may be another. You mentioned the one-off tools. So some folks will pay for a SaaS solution that has a feature that they really, 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 really need, but they don't use. They only use like 20% of the platform. Maybe the SaaS providers will get into this like a more a la carte licensing model where, okay, you can use feature X, but and just pay for that. Kind of like the whole cable is dead thing. Like, why don't I just buy my channels I want? That kind of thing. Maybe that could come
or if somebody only uses that small sliver, then I could see them replace that small sliver with their own thing then, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
that would be the risk is that like, okay, I can't build the entire SaaS solution, but I only use 20% of it. But I can build that 20%. Right. That might be.
I can't replace Salesforce or whatever for everything that it has, right? But if I only use a narrow subset of this tool for my business, then that I could see that happening.
Yeah. All right, and I gotta ask. You talked about the Byte thing, the Byte by Yum. If you, with AI in the picture, if you had it to do over, kind of building that big backbone thing, would you make the same decision faster with AI, slower with AI? Like, how would you have made the decision differently if you were to make it today?
Yeah, whenever I think about building, like especially these like backbone platforms, it's one of those things where like beginnings require a lot of care, because you are making a ton of one-way door decisions, and one-way door decisions that even with AI coding, I don't think you can easily reverse. So an example is like doing data modeling for your domains. These data models are going to start getting integrated into, and now the switching costs for all the companies that are if you have 20 countries on this platform, the API that you're exposing, the domains and contracts you're exposing back and forth to them, the switching cost for those is still quite high because they're integrated into third-party vendors and things like that. So I think if I were building a large new platform today, I would still take great care in the early design. I would maybe use AI to help me flesh out some of the designs, but I would still put my best people that are really thoughtful designers on the domains to help get those essentially keystones of the building in place.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I find is once you have those keystone buildings in place and you have the basic structure and now you have like your basic API and the core domain models are there, the periphery of what you build on, I think can go so much faster now. And I think actually having this sort of strong, stable core actually enables you to move much faster. So now you can have all these front ends, all these tools, all these extra sort of periphery domains that you want to build in top of. As long as you've gotten that core right, I think it is a big enabler to you being able to run. So I think vibe coding, for example, is a little bit of I think I saw a podcast recently, somebody called it a little bit of a slur. I think vibe coding, if you're treating it like in this very narrow definition where it's like you just are like make this application and then shift tab to allow edits and then you just let it run, that is vibe coding from my definition. I think sometimes people call anybody using agents to help build vibe coding, and I don't think that's true. I think you can have very senior engineers building things with AI coding tooling, and we maybe don't have a good name for it today. And maybe it'll just become engineering in the future and the new normal. But I would take a lot of care in those early months, laying those keystones, and then I would be like, all right, let's go, let's run. We got these pieces in place.
All right. The next segment of our show, we have to move on from the ship it or skip it. That was fantastic. Is the lightning round. This is the meat of the show. This is what everybody tunes in for. This is they'll probably fast forward everything we've said, and this is where the answers really matter, right? Like everything we said before is just, we're just kind of guessing, right? But this is the answers count. We grade this. We have an algorithm and all of that. So I just want to make sure you're mentally prepared for the lightning round.
You got me nervous. All right. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you should be. It's big, right? This is a big thing. You probably don't on your day to day, like in your job. Nothing this important ever happens. Yeah. So I mean, it's big.
True. Okay.
So the other thing about the lightning round is this is lightning. You want to be fast. Okay. So I would say just answer first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. What are the 11 herbs and spices for the KFC recipe?
Oh, man, I cannot tell you. I would get shot if I said that. I'm sorry. Pass. We're
done with the really important one. And I thought I could trick you, but I didn't get you. Okay. We've been asking this one of a lot of people. So it's been kind of a bit of a social experiment to see what people say. But do you like the smell of gasoline?
I do. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
And there's people who are like, I feel kind of weird saying this, but I do. And it's been like only one person has said they don't.
Yeah.
It's been weird. It's a very consistent thing that
I remember as a kid saying that I liked it. And I think my mom said that I was weird for saying that I like it. Luckily, there's not lead in gasoline anymore. So, yeah.
Okay. What was your last Halloween costume you ever wore?
I was a Hello Kitty character with my daughter. So, yeah, I was My Melody.
It's a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
Are reindeers? I don't know what the plural there is. Reindeer eye. Are they real creatures?
Yes.
Okay. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
A lot, between 5, 6, and then Celsiuses and Pepsi Maxes.
Keep it going.
Just I keep a steady flow of an unhealthy amount of caffeine all day long.
Good. That's good. If you were really hungry, would you eat a bug?
Yeah, I think so. I've been prepping myself mentally for some future apocalypse when we gotta start harvesting bugs and eating them. So, absolutely.
Would you go to a movie alone?
Yes, I do. I actually go to solo movies a decent bit. Yeah. I just went and saw a solo movie, that new Markiplier movie, maybe like 2 or 3 months ago. The Iron Dome. It was good. Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good.
I used to travel quite a bit for work, and that's when I have done a lot of those movies by myself. I actually had one selfie. I was in a theater all by myself, not just no one with me, but like no one else in the theater too. That was kind of a weird experience, but
yeah. It's one of those things I used to feel self-conscious about, but I moved to Dallas here, and my wife and I like totally opposite movies. I like science fiction movies and things like that. She doesn't like them. So yeah, I just roll with it now. I'm good to go.
I like it. Do you think anyone considers you to be a hipster?
No, I don't think so. I feel like I'm pretty on the opposite end of hipster, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be called, but
yeah,
I don't know what the spectrum is there from hipster to whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I have a beard. That's the only thing. Like, but whenever I think hipster, I think more kind of like handlebar mustache a little bit,
okay,
or something like that. Like, I think like an Austin hipster, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you're down in that area, so you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy garlic?
I'll give it a 8.2.
8.2. Okay. We do a bit of rounding here and there on the scoring, so
okay.
There's a little bit of leeway there.
Okay.
That's what I guess I'm trying to say. So don't feel free to be as accurate as you want.
Okay.
But
okay.
We'll normalize the answers.
Got it.
Would you rather climb a mountain or jump out of a plane?
So I've been skydiving before. So I'm going to say climb a mountain because it's something I haven't done but would like to.
Okay. Do you know how to salsa dance?
No, I have zero coordination. That would embarrass everybody through secondhand embarrassment if I attempted to salsa dance.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chip.
You can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with a good mint chip. Are you the green, like food coloring mint chip kind of guy? Or are you a Breyers mint chip? Where are you going? What are you reaching for?
I'll say maybe old school Breyers when they were still good. So I'm going to go to like the really old Breyers, right? Like,
Okay.
The OG.
Yeah. Okay. This one can be controversial for some folks. Are you a cake or a pie kind of a person?
I am a pie person. I am in general more of a savory person than a sweet person. But I like apple pie, pumpkin pie. Yeah, it's another difference between my wife and I. I'm pie, she's cake.
And you don't get a lot of answers to that question where people are just like, whatever, I'm good.
Right.
That seems like you are in one camp or the other.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you kind of have to have a stance there. And finally, have you ever worn socks with sandals?
No, I think it's against the Geneva Conventions or something. My son does, and all these young kids wear what I think of as old man socks, which are like the long tube socks, and then they wear them with sandals, and I just see them all walking around, and I'm like, it's so odd to me. No show socks were the cool thing whenever I'm growing up, and now people identify you as an old person if you're wearing no show socks. And I'm like, what kind of backwards world is this?
Yeah, and everybody says like, oh, we failed our youth because of this or that. But I do agree.
Yeah.
I think the socks and sandals thing is probably the biggest area where we have failed the youth of at least the United States.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay. Well, that was fantastic. That was good. Again, we'll share your scores with you privately. We don't. It takes a while. We have a whole algorithm. We send it off to the scoring department, and you'll get that back in a few weeks.
All right.
Anything as we wrap? Any books, tools, or resources that you'd want to recommend to folks that you find useful for you?
Books or resources? My favorite programming book is The Elements of Computing Systems. And it has an accompanying class with it called NAND to Tetris. And I had this book, the first edition of this book, whenever I was in university, and it takes you from building a NAND gate all the way up to building a computer, a compiler, and assembler on top of it that can run Tetris. And I had a lot of classes in college that, like computer engineering class and stuff, but they all were like very deep. But like, it was hard for me to zoom out and see the forest for the trees a little bit. And after I did this book and built that computer that could run Tetris end to end, and I had built every layer of it, I felt like the magic had been unfolded for me in a way that had not been before. So that is my favorite computer science book, and I think it still holds up today.
Anything you'd like to promote? You got any talks coming up that you're going to be at a conference or something like that? Or is there anything big coming from Yum or anything like that you want to promote?
I'm starting a podcast soon with a colleague, and it's called 16 Bits, and it's going to be coming out soon, but it's still kind of early days for that. So maybe I'll just kind of plug that to keep an eye out for that, maybe search around for that whenever some future listen to this episode.
Yeah, let us know. We'll help promote it for sure. And what's the is it technology? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think it's like broad-based technology industry, and then getting some guests and things on as well. But I don't know. I think we're still kind of feeling it out a little bit. Like, as you know, there's different sort of podcast formats. Some of them can be more sort of pure interview style, and then some of them can be like riffing on a topic with a group of people. And part of me thinks maybe we should just try a few and kind of see what feels right or what sticks or what resonates, So I don't know.
Yeah. You'll likely not get it perfect out of the gate. And, I think we've had a different format along the way. We had a co-host that started, and we'd had a different kind of a vibe when we started. But you'll settle into, what's comfortable and what you all like. That's cool. Well, this has been really great. I know we normally don't record for this long, but it's been a great conversation. I apologize for keeping you so late.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah.
I mean, we went way over our time. Yeah, this has been really great, and really appreciate you coming on. We really, really enjoyed the conversation today.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I had a great time.
All right. Well, if you'd like to get in touch with us here at the /, shoot us an email at the/@calibrity.com. See you next time. The / podcast is created by Calibrity. The / team is director and producer Ryan Wilson, editing by Steve Baradelli, marketing support by Taylor Blessing, and I'm your host, James Carman. Thanks for listening.